Так. Глубокая ночь. Почему бы не пройти игру, которая заставляет иной раз задуматься о своей жизни. Игра называется Remains of Edith Finch. Of Edith Finch. Ладно. Не силен в английском. Окончательно, по крайней мере. Пару слов, наверное, скажу предыстории. Игра в свое время в 17-18 году достаточно сильно пошумела. Практически все издания от 8 до 9 баллов игровые выставили. А выставили по какой причине? Потому что игра, в принципе, необычная. Берет тем, что студия совсем не именитая, но сделала проект с душой. Сделала проект необычный, самобытный в какой-то своей мере. Как бы по жанру это скорее просто квест. По наполняемости тут очень много смешанных жанров в целом. Вот. Мы играем за главную героиню Эдит Финч, которая возвращается в свой особняк, как бы фамильный. Она, как казалось, последняя представительница своего рода. Ну и вот как бы вступает во владение. Но не буду спойлерить. По ходу сюжета игры мы узнаем одну очень интересную деталь. Вот, мы как бы возвращаемся, точнее, плывем на какой-то остров. В общем, приятного нам прохождения.
A lot of this isn't going to make sense to you, and I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to start at the beginning, with the house.
Вот мы как бы приплыли. Сейчас мы будем двигаться к дому. Вот это вот впереди это дом. Дом состоит из разных комнат.
I lived here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed inside half the rooms.
Да, потому что каждая комната была, в принципе, к какому-то определенному человеку прикреплена. Чем больше семейство разрасталось, тем больше комнат, соответственно, добавлялось в этом доме. Очень интересный момент.
Inside the mailbox were bills from 7 years ago, marked urgent, open immediately. I hadn't been back since my brother Lewis's funeral.
Очень красиво. Буквы рассыпаются, все.
In a will, my mother left me a key, but didn't tell me what it unlocked. Maybe she thought I'd know. Or she thought that the mystery would be enough to bring me back.
По-моему, насколько я помню по сюжету, последний как бы... ну тут мы выбираем дорогу. Я как бы знаю ту и другую дорогу, ну ладно, пройдем по этой. Вот мать главной героини, по-моему, последняя умерла здесь. Ну не здесь, вообще просто последняя из рода умерла, она, по-моему, умерла от рака. Если память не изменяет.
No one had driven this way in a long time, but I saw a few hoof prints.
То есть дом такой пришел в упадок, запустение. Оба. Привет. Убежал. Ну, графика достаточно красивая. Для 17-го года, для студии, которая, в принципе, это инди-студия такая, она не вызывает отторжения.
The truth is, even after I inherited the house, I never thought I'd come back to it. But now I had questions about my family that only the house knew the answers to.
Да.
The house was exactly like I remembered it, the way I'd been dreaming about it.
То есть он был когда-то просто домом, но потом начали появляться еще надстройки. В целом здесь очень такой линейный сюжет относительно, но то, как будут подаваться разные сцены, это очень интересно лишь
I
потому,
asked
что...
Edie once about the dragon in the pond. She said it had killed her husband. I was 6. It seemed like an odd joke to me, even then.
Ну, и маленькая такая ремарочка. Скажем так, эта игра напрямую сопряжена со смертью. Как бы все эпизоды здесь будут показывать.
As a child, the house made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't put into words. Now, as a 17-year-old, I knew exactly what those words were. I was afraid of the house.
Ну, тут ничего страшного не будет, сразу скажу так. Может, немножко мистики будет, скорее. Ну, никак не страшно. Так. Оп. Проладим. Я просто как бы...
Crawling through the doggy door used to be a lot easier when I was 11.
Вот, то есть мы проникли в дом. Все, конечно же.
The power had been turned off the night we left.
Даже вот блики света переданы здесь хорошо.
For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. But instead of a family, there were just memories of one.
То есть это вот мать, это как бы мы главная героиня, бабушка и брат. Вот. Можно предположить, что последний раз здесь были в 2010 году. А по сюжету игры тут, походу, я так понимаю, 17-й год.
Like how only one restaurant would deliver to our house, so we had Chinese a lot. Or how after Louis started working at the cannery, we all got sick of eating salmon. Except our cat, Molly.
Я просто не буду все читать, потому что я думаю, что это не очень имеет смысл. Кому надо, тот прочитает. Какие-то важные моменты я буду подмечать. Здесь пока
The table
просто...
was still a wreck from the night we left. It was like a bomb had gone off, killing everyone but sparing the furniture.
То есть, как бы, дом покидали в относительной спешке, скажем так.
My mom was the only one of us who could imagine Great-Grandma Edie living in a nursing home.
Мы просто ходим по дому пока и ностальгируем.
Nothing in the house looked abnormal. There was just too much of it, like a smile with too many teeth. Mom always told me to stay out of the basement, so I wasn't too surprised when the key didn't fit.
Это пока. Ладно, я помню.
Great-Grandpa Sven built a music box for Barbara, along with the rest of the house.
Музыку к этой игре написал создатель музыки к Фарго, еще каким-то сериалам. То есть достаточно такой именитый человек.
My mom wasn't much of an optimist, but she never stopped believing that my brother Milton was alive. Edie told me once that every Finch who ever lived is buried somewhere in the library.
Ну, то есть тут семейный архив какой-то, походу. В общем, по сюжету игры мы будем посещать разные комнаты этого дома.
After Milton disappeared, Mom sealed up all the bedrooms. Then Edie retaliated and drilled peepholes.
Мы будем посещать разные комнаты и, соответственно, узнавать историю каждого ее жителя. Но так как мы знаем...
The last time I was in Edith Sr.'s room, I was 10 and she was painting my portrait.
Они тут все даты жизни указаны. Так, стоп, назад. То есть можно на дверях увидеть. Это был муж и жена. Муж, конечно же, гораздо раньше скончался. Классика. Вот. 11 лет.
My Grandpa Sam spent 7 years sharing a room with his dead brother, Calvin.
Уже как-то, да, немножко не по себе.
As a kid, I just assumed every house had peepholes and sealed rooms you weren't allowed inside of.
И согласно всем этим комнатам мы увидим истории всех этих людей непосредственно перед смертью. Как он такой поворот?
Molly always seemed like a girl I could imagine being friends with, if she hadn't died in 1947.
Причем эти все флешбеки, скажем так, будут как бы как разные стили игры показаны.
I spent a lot of time playing in Great Uncle Walter's room. I think my mom sometimes regretted not sealing it up.
Вот мы и
Lewis told
пришли.
me there were secret passages, but I never believed him. Turns out, my mom was really good at keeping secrets. Now it was time to find out what my mom had been afraid of.
Теперь мы погружаемся уже непосредственно в саму историю.
Reading this, maybe it sounds like I had a plan. But I had no idea what was behind that door. Just like I had no idea where all this was gonna lead.
Все, назад пути нет, о боги, о боги.
I grew up looking at Molly's room through the peephole. Molly's gerbil had a tiny bedroom with its own even tinier gerbil cage. Being inside for the first time, I felt like I'd stepped behind a painting. I got the sense Edie had spent a lot of time here before my mom sealed the doors.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat.
То есть мы сейчас играем за маленькую девочку, вот Молли, по-моему, по имени ее звали. Да, Молли. Вот, она проснулась голодной, потому что ее положили спать без ужина, и она решила что-нибудь похавать. Классическая вещь, на самом-то деле.
My Halloween candy was all gone.
Эх, конфет на Хэллоуин не осталось.
Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
Вот так вот. Никогда не переставайте кормить своих детей.
The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it.
Съели. Мы отобрали у бедного хомяка еду.
I thought about eating Christopher, but I held back.
В общем, маленькая голодная девочка на самом-то деле. Дети даже по росту как бы маленькие.
I kept eating and eating.
Сейчас пасту навернем. Тут не та паста, которая съедобная. Это ужасно.
I ate a lot of things that night.
Да уж. Кажется, это было не очень съедобно, но ладно.
Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. reached out for her. And suddenly, I was a cat.
Вы понимаете, что произошло, да? В принципе, несколько, может быть, моментов. Не помню, здесь будут ли объясняться или нет.
But the bird was really scared.
Представила себя котом. Все, не видно лапка. Зато молчим. Мы видим дом. Тогда он еще не был таким высоким.
Mom and Dad didn't even look at me.
Смотрим в окно. Так. Еще определенные. Оп. Оп. Тут умереть нельзя, в принципе. Ну, как бы по геймплею я имею в виду, а не по сюжету. Эта птичка завела нас на самое высокое дерево, правда?
I jumped and I almost got her. I could tell she was getting really tired. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mama bird. I gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass.
Мы сейчас как бы проглючили немножко и превратились в сову. Сейчас мы будем летать и искать кроликов.
Rabbits.
Я не помню, где он точно. Сейчас еще надо найти. Кролик, кролик. Очень интересный геймплей на самом деле. Вот он, кролик. Давайте схватим кролика. Воу-воу-воу-воу. Я даже не один здесь. Стой. Вот так-то это просто. Будь маленькой девочкой, которая возомнилась совой. Давайте. Заберем себе зайцы. Давай, есть! Мы его взяли.
I imagined his face looking up and seeing mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off to find something bigger.
Добычу побольше. И мы ее найдем, будьте уверены.
A mama rabbit.
Охота! Ее схватили. Маму кроликом.
She was almost too big to carry. I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. And suddenly, I was a shark.
Это вообще шикарный поворот. Мы акула теперь. Мы должны упасть. Мы должны упасть вниз. А вот как упасть от бедной акули вниз, когда она плавать-то не может сейчас. Оп, 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 вперед! равно попадем в воду.
I rolled off a cliff and into the ocean. Now, I was hungrier than ever.
Ну так и макбул, конечно же, мы хотим есть. Еще есть инверсия управления немножко. Мы видим, кто-то плывет.
I wanted fat, juicy seals.
Тюлень. Ам.
I tore off her flipper, and it tasted really good.
Какая девочка, правда? Вкусила бедному моржу плавник. Так. Я все, меня хватает малек. Оп. Оп, ты куда? Стой. Стой. Ау. Каков хитрый тюлень, да?
Grabbed on
Но мы
tight.
хитрее.
When I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed.
А теперь мы маленький осьминожек. Ну как маленький, совсем не маленький, ну ладно. Забавно, правда? Я говорю, что не очень страшно, но это все зависит от того, насколько вы впечатлительны. Вот, смотрите, как тут ползти. А, ну все, спамал.
Now I was a monster, and I smelled people everywhere.
Все, просто передвигаемся таким образом. Нам нужно кого-то съесть.
I was big, but I moved real quiet.
Такая мини-змейка. Ага.
I wanted to stop, but also I didn't.
Что-то похоже на Лавкрафта, правда? Песенка вообще-то этих пиратов на самом деле. Мы дали ему допить. Почти дали. Ладно, давайте его съедим. И тут у нас есть капитан корабля. Привет, капитан.
After the last passenger, I was still hungry. Across the water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe.
Угадайте, куда мы приплывем. Угадали.
I got closer and closer.
Комнату к одной очень маленькой девочке. Голодной маленькой девочке.
all my stomach started growling. And suddenly, I was me again. I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything. I think it's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
Круто, правда? Вот так закончилась история Молли. На самом деле я не помню.
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
Возможно, ее укусили какая-то ядовитая змея, а возможно, из-за того, что она всякого наелась, у нее случились какие-то приступы, отравление какое-то, и она умерла в свои 10 лет. По ходу игры мы будем заполнять этот вот дневник, добавляя картиночки. То есть, как видите, здесь достаточно много. Так, продолжаем. Да, мы не превращаемся в кошку, как в прошлое.
This will be obvious later, but my mom never told me any of these stories. Edie would have, but Mom didn't like bringing up the past. Though, when we adopted a stray kitten, she was the one who named it Molly.
У Молли была явно хорошая фантазия.
I spent a lot of time in Great-Grandma Edie's room.
Да, у нас на том фото была
Edie
прабабушка.
gave a big interview about a mole man living under the Finch house. My mom was furious.
Запомните вот этот вот момент про человека-крота. Мы узнаем еще.
Louis died a week before we left, but Edie had already started to memorialize him.
То есть у меня
Edie
старший
knit me a
брат.
new pair of gloves every year, just in time to replace the old ones.
Да, мы, походу.
Her room was like a museum. For 500 years, the Finches have been famous throughout Norway for their fortune and misfortune.
То есть родом наша главная героиня из Норвегии.
Odin Finch buries the latest victims of the family curse, his wife Ingeborg and their newborn son, Johan.
Рядом с домом семейное кладбище
On
находится.
January 7th, 1937, he set sail with his family and his house, hoping to leave the curse behind.
Вы понимаете, насколько все это интересно? Человек собрал с собой свой дом. Панельное гетто из Минска не заберешь никуда, да.
But 40-foot waves off the coast of Washington send the house and Odin to the bottom of the sea.
Вот мы и попали в шторм. Вот маленький
Odin's
нюанс,
daughter
естественно.
Edie, with husband Sven and baby Molly, step ashore on their new home, Orcas Island.
Остров Касаток. Давай.
Odin Finch is the first to be buried in the new family cemetery.
Вся фишка в том, что корабль с домом затонул вот здесь недалеко. И сам дом затонул, и только его крыша, там шпили, скажем так, что видим. И потом это увидим, когда выйдем на большую как бы, там, обзорную площадку.
His daughter Edie is already dreaming of a new Finch house.
Ну и они решили вот на этом месте строить свой новый дом, вот, в котором мы сейчас находимся. Все. Это все. Так, выйти отсюда я не помню. Ну все, просто отодвигаем. Вот, мы добавили к себе
Whatever's wrong
Одина.
with this family, it goes back a long ways.
Да, скорее всего, какое-то проклятие на них висит. Один прожил 57 лет, нормально еще, вполне нормально. Птичка красивая, правда? Комната была построена в
When Edie
1937
told
году.
people Sven was killed by a dragon, she could also have said he was building a dragon-shaped slide that collapsed. She could have, but she didn't.
Вы помните того дракона, который там в пруду лежал? Это вот как раз таки проект Свена, которого он придушил по итогу.
Even in her 90s, sometimes Edie seemed a lot younger than my mother.
Вот это мы, бабушка, прабабушка, точнее, мама. Розовая ванна. Как вот такой поворот событий? У нас есть ключик от всех замков.
There's a secret in this bathroom. It's in the last place you would look. It isn't in the cupboard. It's hidden in this book.
Опа. Секретик.
Sven gave Sam an old camera he'd refurbished. He never put it down.
Можем видеть фотографии. А это, немножко проспойлерю, отец. И Эдит, по-моему, это ее отец.
From the paintings on the wall, it was clear my brother Milton had been here before me.
Это тот брат, который пропал. Вот мы проникли в еще одну комнату. Кельвин и Сэм. Все, они разделили комнату на
I knew
парты.
Grandpa Sam had a twin.
Брат-близнец был у дедушки ее.
And that he never talked about him.
Но никто о
I
нем
guess
не
my grandpa
говорил.
didn't like history any more than my mom did.
Вот видите, Кельвин. Только все это сохранено.
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it.
Мы катаемся на качелях.
My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom. And he did. At Barbara's funeral, we swore we'd never be afraid again. And he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
Понимаете, да, что произойдет?
Sam! Calvin! Dinner's ready! Coming!
But that day, he finally made up his mind to do it. I told him going around was impossible.
Думаю, все, кто когда-то качались на качелях,
Maybe if I hadn't said that,
всегда хотели на максимальную высоту подняться.
Calvin! I'm not gonna tell you again!
maybe if the wind hadn't picked up, then maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it.
Забавно, что
I think
у
he'd
нас
already made up his mind. That's what I want to remember about my brother.
да, мы сделали полный аппарат. Можем
The
самолет.
day he made up his mind to fly. And he did.
Какой умник додумался сделать качели на краю обрыва? Одному богу известно, конечно.
Calvin's story felt strangely familiar. When I was younger, I remember trying to do the exact same thing.
Угу. Качели-то оставили. Ну, идеально. Молодцы вообще. Просто слов нет.
After the funeral, Edie roped off Calvin's half of the room.
Еще один тайный проход. Будет очень интересный
The passages were a pretty tight fit. They'd obviously been built for smaller hands and bellies.
Это мы потом. Пока нам сюда. Попали в комнату юной актрисы.
Growing up, I always thought of Barbara as a child star.
Девочка была кинозвездой. Но,
I never thought about how hard it must have been for her afterwards.
как и все дети, она выросла. И угадайте, кем она стала? Правильно, официанткой. Вообще будет интересный, кстати, момент.
Of all the stories people wrote about Barbara's death, I'm surprised Edie saved this one.
По-моему, официантка, может, почему?
Old Jack here with another ghastly tale inspired by America's most unfortunate family. I'm calling it The Surprise Ending of
В стиле
Barbara
байк из склепа, кто
Finch.
знает, тот поймет, как говорится.
As a child star, Barbara was famous for her scream. Now at 16, she was all washed up. A has-been.
Да, она стала...
But in a lucky break, she'd been asked to perform her signature scream at a local convention for monster movie fans. It was just the boost her career needed. Unfortunately, her scream hadn't aged well.
Getting better. I think you just need the right motivation.
Her biggest fan and current boyfriend, Rick, was about to demonstrate when...
Now that was a great scream.
It was Barbara's father, Sven. He'd slipped into a table saw and had to be rushed to the emergency room. So Barbara got stuck babysitting her youngest brother, Walter. Her convention comeback was cancelled.
Okay, I'm hearing frustration, but I'm not hearing terror. What if I tried...
A gang of hoodlums in Halloween masks have been terrorizing Orcas Island tonight. Police are urging residents to...
That came from the basement.
You're right! Also, I loved your delivery on that. Why is your basement door locked?
Because my dad likes making puzzles and secret passages. There's a key hidden in the music box. The secret
Вот нам и
is to
подсказочка.
keep winding and winding until finally the key pops out.
Thanks, babe. I'll be back in a sec.
20 minutes later, Rick hadn't returned. So Barbara went to look for him, right on cue.
Вот нам и дадут поуправлять сейчас.
She reached for the music box.
Крутим, крутим.
And as she wound the key, she listened for Rick, but the house was silent.
Вы поняли, в чем прикол? Фишка-то в том, что ключ. Музыка как из Хэллоуина. Ключ-то был все равно как в шкатулке, хотя он же типа там был.
She found Rick's crutch and imagined the worst.
Такая напряженная музыка. Мы можем здесь ломать все что угодно. Хоть какой-то экшен в игре, правда? Давайте. Естественно. Оба. Можем поиграть в этот бильярд. Блин. Практически не вышло. Слишком. Нет, это не прокатит.
The gang's leader is the infamous Hookman killer, Dr. Carl Hamill, who impaled and then ate his family 10 years ago tonight.
10 лет назад. Холодильник. Куда идти? Что там будет?
Fridge rattled and grew still.
Идиот. Нана.
Rick?
Barb, relax. I was just trying to scare you to help you find your scream.
Well, I'm not scared, Rick. I'm furious.
Then act furious. All I'm getting from you now is that you're hurt and confused and
She threw him out, but she kept a little something to remember him by.
Barb, have you seen my other crutch?
And she was still holding it when she fell asleep watching the late picture show. Hours later...
Barbara! Walter, what's going on up there? Ah! Okay, I'm coming up, but if this is a trick, you're dead, Walter.
Ну, ничего нельзя сломать. Да. Видите, как стиль же анимации такой нарисованный. Скелетик. Тоже ничего себе.
Walter had vanished, but his bedside radio was still on.
Orcas Island police describe the man as 6 feet tall, with a steel hook for a hand. Residents are urged to lock all doors and windows and notify the police of any suspicious activity.
I returned, saw the hook man, and was speechless. He was quite smashing. He couldn't get enough of Barbara.
Okay, Barbara, there's gotta be another way out of here.
That night, she played her part beautifully. Molly's door hadn't been opened in years. The hinges groaned.
Пока убийца с крюком.
Wasn't moving, but she sensed the story might not be over yet.
Да, мы такие, типа, сейчас мы сбежим. Как в классических фильмах ужасов. У нас как раз таки труп исчезает. Ну, убийца. Его нет.
The hookman had vanished. She listened for his breathing, but all she heard was...
Как в дешевых триллерах
At the
80-х.
door, she heard whispering. It was coming from inside the house.
Оба-на. Добрый вечер.
Oh dear.
И тут крик прорезался.
The monsters had come to surprise her. For Barbara, it was a dream come true. Then she saw what kind of monsters they were, and she realized what was about to happen. She was going to be famous. And with her final breath, Barbara Finch gave the performance of her life. I wasn't there myself, but I hear Barbara was magnificent. Poor girl. She had a taste for stardom. But unfortunately, so did her fans. Of course, the police blamed it all on poor Rick, who disappeared the same night. And little Walter? Hiding under his bed the whole time. He took it all pretty hard, but that's another story. As for Barbara, tucked inside the music box was all they ever found of her. Her ear.
Вот так вот.
Now that's what I call a real eerie tale.
Четный юмор. Вот еще одна
Edie
зарубочка.
told me all Barbara wanted was to be remembered, as absurd as that comic was. Maybe what Edie saw was a happy ending.
Даже никто не убирал ничего. Тебе надо обратно вернуться.
I guess now I know why Mom didn't like me playing with the music box.
Угу. Теперь понятно, почему тебе не нравилось.
Edie's father, Odin, built the original house. Whenever people ask me about my family, the first thing they always want to know about is Barbara.
Барбара самая знаменитая была из всех.
Mom must have locked the third floor stairs on the night we left.
Но вы понимаете, что нам дали подсказочку? Нам дали подсказочку. Поэтому мы сейчас пойдем в подвал. Кто-то почему-то на медленной ночи идет. Оп, вот наш ключик. Интересно, все режимы, наверное, могли бы его и сразу получить. Но я так не пробовал никогда, ну ладно. Музыка, в принципе, хорошая, шикарная. Мы в подвале, а вот наш
Mom
Свен.
said the basement was off limits, unless I wanted another tetanus shot. I saw Edie sneak down to the basement once, carrying packages. I thought maybe she was hiding presents. It turned out she was hiding a lot more than that.
Помните? Просил заботиться. Человека-крота, да? Вот он, человек.
I remember asking Mom once about where Walter had gone.
Вот он.
She said after
Walter.
Barbara died, he got as far away as he could. If there's a pattern in all these stories, I think it's that none of us has gotten very far.
Да. Вот она. Жизнь в подвале. Уолтер. Относительно недавно умер, правда? В 2005 году.
Goodbye, everyone. I can't believe I've been down here for 30 years.
30 лет.
On that first day, after the shaking started, I didn't think I'd survive a week.
68 год. Время холодной войны и страха ядерного удара.
But after a few days, I settled into a routine. That's what kept me sane. Having a schedule, living for today. I always expected to be dead tomorrow.
76 год уже. Прошло 8 лет, да?
But if you wait long enough, you get used to anything.
За 8 лет так не научился, что этого чувачка надо было поставить в другое место.
Even a monster on the other side of the door starts to feel normal. Almost friendly.
Слышь, насколько бы я сошел с ума в такой ситуации быстрее.
And then one day, everything just stopped.
Музыка играет на фоне.
Whatever that thing was,
Разная
it
сила.
was gone. Maybe it got tired of waiting. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid.
Приемник играет всегда на тот момент современная музыка, скажем так.
It's been a week now, the longest in 30 years. I'm done waiting. I have to leave while I still can.
Да, мы решили все-таки через 30 лет выйти. Тряску уже помните, да? Которая сопровождалась перед каждой едой. Интересно, почему бы, да?
I know it's out there somewhere.
Настолько после того случая с Барбарой
Whatever killed Barbara
свихнулся,
and Molly
что 30 лет провел
and Calvin.
в подвале.
Maybe this is all a mistake. But I need to stop living the same day, even if it kills me.
Нам нужно выйти. Ну,
Whatever's out there, I want you to know I'm ready for it. I'm going to appreciate all of it, especially the food. I don't mind if I only have a year left, or a month, or a single week.
всего
I'd be
неделя.
happy with one new day. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
Поняли, да? Поезд, который был за стенкой всегда, который трёс еду, сбил этого глупца, который 30 лет провел в подвале.
Walter
Так и не
died when I
увидев
was
жизни.
6. I can't believe my mom never told me he was down here.
Вот у нас человек-крот.
I'm sure my mom was trying to protect me.
Рык.
Maybe she was afraid I'd end up like Walter. But if she never told me about an uncle under the house, I can only imagine what else she was hiding.
Да, секреты, секреты.
I
они
don't
всё
want to
рушат.
make the same mistakes she made. Trying to bury something that's still alive.
Ну, как бы, будем надеяться, что нас здесь не
Now that
собьют
there's only
ничего.
one of us left, or maybe two, I thought it was time I heard the stories for myself and found out what happened to everyone else.
Помните про сюжетом,
But now
который
I'm
я
worried the
говорил?
stories themselves might be the problem. Maybe we believed so much in a family curse, we made it real.
Вот наш Уолтер.
I don't know if I should even be writing this. Maybe it'd be better if all this just died with me. But I thought you should know about your family.
Теперь мы подходим к самому главному моменту. Что
And the
наша
history you're a part of.
главная героиня в момент игры, и несмотря на то, что ей 18 лет, беременна. Эту историю напишет в первую очередь для своего будущего ребенка. Вот этот дом, который остался на рифах. Красиво, очень красиво. Для игры.
Though to be honest, I feel as lost as you probably do right now. I think the people in these stories believed them, for what that's worth. And when you look at the house, that history of imagination and stubbornness and madness, any of it seems possible. I think we've been surrounded by death for so long, we've just gotten used to it. What kind of family finishes building a cemetery before starting the house?
Хороший вопрос. Что за семья, которая закладывает кладбище раньше, чем дом?
It's embarrassing for me to admit this, but the pet cemetery made me more uncomfortable than the human one. 3 of the gerbils were mine, and 2 had been my fault.
И у всех было одинаковое имя. Дарпи какой-то. Барпи, Дарпи, Дарпи Джо. Да вы прикалываетесь? Что здесь не хомяки? Столько жили. Хомяк не может жить 12 лет, вы чё? Это собаки, наверное. Шарпи, Фарпи. Короче, Арпи какой-то был, кстати, Зарпи. Котик.
Sven built the house, but it was Edie who designed the cemetery.
Дизайн кладбища это сильно, да? Ну, это красиво. Согласитесь. Вот это все наши. Родилась день всех святых, 31 и умерла в тот же день. Забавненько.
I'm sure Odin's monument had been Edie's idea. My mom was always trying to move on, but for Edie, the past never went away. She could see it poking out of the water at low tide.
Да. посмотрим на этот дом.
Edie said she dreamed about the old house every night. Edie's side was always easier for me to understand. But the older I get, the more I can see where my mom was coming from. Her dad had been pretty strict, but it wasn't enough to save her brothers. She was just trying to do better.
Грегори, Сэм, Газ. Грегори так вообще 1 годик. Депрессивная игрушка, если принимать все
She
близко к
lost 2
сердцу.
of her brothers, just like I did. I get why she tried so hard to protect us.
Немножко вас обманул. Милтон.
We never found Milton's body, so my mom insisted we were putting up a monument, not a tombstone. There's so many things I wish I could ask my mom now. Part of me thinks this is what she wanted all along. For me to come back someday and find everything out for myself. But looking back on it now, if she told me there was going to be so much climbing, I never would have come when I was 22 weeks pregnant.
22-я неделя беременности.
I never met Grandpa Sam, but I think he and my mom had a lot in common. They were both pretty intense. Sam spent his life shooting photos, but Mom said he got nervous being in front of the camera. I guess we're all afraid of something.
Это потом.
Instead of hiding from death, Sam seemed to go out of his way to meet it.
На самом деле мы можем что-то пропускать, если недосконально смотреть все уголки. Но это чисто дополняет историю на самом деле. Она не... в любом случае не пойдет дальше, пока мы не сделаем определенные этапы. Вот, это Сэм, это брат был матери. Открываем. Пойдем. Фотограф и охотник.
Dawn, I promise, you'll never forget this weekend.
Yes, sir.
These memories are gonna last a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. What? Am I gonna have to shoot anything?
It's a hunting trip, Dawn. Shooting is strongly encouraged.
Это мать, по-моему, насколько я понимаю.
Perfect.
It's gonna rain the whole weekend, isn't it? I will never forget this weekend, Dad.
That's the spirit. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna take some pictures, okay?
Just be careful. That camera's older than you are.
А, нет, это дед, получается, нашей главной героини.
You're right, Dad. It's starting to clear up. Still freezing, though.
Definitely should not have drunk all that coffee.
Hold still while I take a picture of you.
I definitely won't be moving.
Are you...
Hey!
That's a keeper.
Nothing quite like being outside. I'm just saying, I'm not always gonna be here, Don. You'll need to remember this stuff, if you want to survive.
I'll be fine, Dad.
You know who else thought he was gonna be fine?
Some guy who died.
Don, I'm being serious.
I know, Dad. You're always serious. Doesn't being out here make you want to chill out?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't been out here in 20 years. Don, don't you think you could find something more interesting to photograph? Last time I was with my brother Calvin. Man, that was a great trip. Your grandpa Sven taught us how to fish, how to build a fire. We found an old logging trail. There were deer everywhere. I bet if I could remember where that trail... You don't need to waste any more film on me, kiddo. Give me a minute to check the map.
Dad!
Good eyes, Don. Before you take the shot, let me get a picture of you.
I'm over here, Dad.
One sec, Don. Let me get a picture of you.
Dad, I...
Just breathe. Turn off your imagination. Focus on your target. Let me get behind you.
Do I have to do this?
Don, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to survive, you'll need to be strong.
Все умные вещи говорил.
Great shot, Don! I'm proud of you, Don. Always remember that, okay?
Dad, it's twitching. I think
That's
it's
totally
so...
normal, Don. Just focus on the camera. Try not to think about...
Dad!
Вот вам и фотография.
Of all these stories, that's the one I wish most that my mom had told me.
Можно считать, что мать была виновницей смерти отца своего. Так, я помню, сейчас либо сюда, не сюда. Значит, идем туда, в туннель.
After Sam died, my mom and Edie got really close. They'd both lost a lot.
вообще самая жестокая вещь. Ну, как самая жестокая? Все жестокие, но некоторые больше других. Грегори. 1 год.
Dear Kay, do you remember the way Gregory used to laugh when he thought he was alone? Like something funny was happening, but only he could see it. I think he saw things the rest of us don't.
Over, Gregory. It's time to... Hold on, sweetie.
Никогда не оставляйте детей маленьких в ванной.
Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
I wonder what he saw. What his world was like. It reminded me so much of Calvin. Lost in his imagination. Whatever it was he saw.
Ну давай. Пушка. Батл Тодс. Оттолкните меня. Тяжело, да. Вот здесь. О.
Sure made him happy.
Утки, давайте, подтолкните меня. Ладно, утки. Ладно, не сюда. Забавно геймплей вообще, на самом деле. Оп.
I know how silly it sounds. That I worried about a baby being too happy. But I could feel him slipping away.
Sorry about that, Gregory.
I know you did everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
Никогда не знаешь наперед, что будет.
Hold on, I don't want Gregory to hear this.
I wish he could have told us about the world he saw. Hey, there's so much I don't understand about Gregory, about everything.
Это ужасно на самом деле.
But I know what happened wasn't your fault.
Это ужасно.
I'm sure he's happy. And he'd want you to be happy too. Good luck, Kay. Love, Sam.
Еще один наш в двери.
I can't imagine my mom ever writing poetry, and yet...
A poem for Gus, who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard. My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, we don't need a stepmom were the words that I
now
remember.
pronounce you husband and wife. You may just cry.
When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But Gus declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger.
Юс был своеобразным мальчиком, да? Мать у него что не ставил. Это была его свадьба.
The wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent. The rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made. The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. But all my father said to this was, "Make the music louder." I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam. But I didn't. Until we found you.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
Гас тогда уже был панком. Никогда ничего не знаешь наперед.
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get. Religion was another thing my mom never talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died. She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay.
Отец, как водится, индиец. Не судите строго. Что поделать, что поделать.
My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English.
Учителем английского языка.
Lewis was born a year later.
Быстренько родился Льюис.
When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go. I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back.
Это что все здесь умирали раньше срока без загадочных обстоятельств.
The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that.
Просто такова судьба, стечение обстоятельств, иногда воля случая и глупости.
And for a while, things were good, almost normal. But it didn't last.
Да, какое-то время было все хорошо.
The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
Вот этот замок.
After Milton disappeared, the only thing he left behind was a room full of paintings.
Просто чувак пропал с крыши. Ну, будем в роли следователя. Второй год, даже на 2 года мне младше.
Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush.
Вот и все. Ничего не понятно, правда? Просто взял и ушел в другую реальность, наверное.
I was 4 when Milton disappeared.
Это ужасно. Многие
Mom
смерти
spent months
не
searching for my brother.
объясняются.
Then she sealed the doors.
Но в любом случае все погибали.
Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out.
Ну, тут завязана какая-то мистика с одной стороны, а с другой стороны вообще ничего не понятно на самом деле. Это вот прикольно, что все это было запутано так преподано. Еще туда вернемся. Идем.
Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Lewis blamed himself.
Подходим к старшему
After
брату.
he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery.
Ну да, у чувака была явно депрессия.
Everyone always told me to stay out of Lewis's room. Except Lewis.
Янечка стоит.
Lewis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on. Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
Слишком часто погибал, да? По-моему, сняли, что хотели. Все осталось как и было. Марихуана. Это потом понадобится. Все, мы подойдем к конверту.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats and toads. And things that have not names.
Скучная жизнь была. Что он себе придумал мини-игру, пока работал монотонно, рубая головы рыбам. Надо одновременно двумя, давайте, двумя моментами улавливать.
He took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more.
То есть каждым движением мы из платформера превращаемся в полноценную игру.
I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won.
Логично, что своим воображением победил. И как Марио.
They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville.
New York.
St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis. Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Louis kept sailing on. In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a...
Я по-другому пойти пойду.
Beautiful prince. The prince was on his own quest for... sinister serpents. He followed the sound of his electric sitar.
Музыка.
His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination.
Он понимал, что он шевелится.
But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Louis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him. We began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Louis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
Человек вообще потерялся.
I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions.
Все товарищи. Понимаете, что весь этот выбор, что мы делали, когда плыли,
including the wise Calico who'd insisted on advising him.
корабликом ни на что по итогу не влиял. Иногда, по сути, в жизни бывает, что бы ты ни убрал, все равно путь только один. Проще забыться о своих каких-то грезах, чем что-то в реальности
His
достичь.
prince waited, holding his crown.
Это, походу, было в толерантность удар, но, по сути,
There was
меняется
only
только
one thing
декорация.
left to do.
Только последнее действие. Угадайте, какое, да? Догадались уже? Я думаю, да. Кто был внимательным.
Bend down his head.
Сейчас нас коронуют.
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
Еще одна зарубочка у нас.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
Не познакомишь.
On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left.
Сразу после смерти они уехали.
My mom ended up leaving everything behind.
Думаю, что можно убежать. Просто поменяем дислокацию. От себя не убежишь.
What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another.
Вот
All
наша
that's left now
комната.
was to tell you about that last night. That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
Бабушка отказалась уезжать. Точнее, прабабушка, так понимаю.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
Ну, другой ход есть.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house.
Мама их предупреждала, что поменяют дислокацию.
Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight.
Ну, мать говорит, что лучше уехать сейчас.
We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning. Okay?
Типа бабушку должны сдать в пансионат для престарелых. Очень некрасиво, на мой взгляд.
There's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life.
Да. Жутковато,
But I never thought I'd go back to it.
Пойдем по...
When the fog rolled in, I lost my way.
Давайте по звуку.
I got turned around. For a while, I wandered. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go!
I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it. But she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is.
Понимаете, да?
This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
Как вы понимаете, она умерла при родах. И ее похоронили на семейном кладбище. Вот такая грустная, с одной стороны, история, а с другой достаточно интересная. Тут идет, ну, как бы фотографии всех разработчиков с детьми. Ну, вообще шикарно просто подборка. В этом плане, что они вот этим планом даже заморочились, даже в титрах. Вот, надеюсь, тому, кто это посмотрит, будет интересно. Заставит о чем-то задуматься. Ну или просто как-то провести время. Графика в игре шикарная. Геймплей не напрягающий. Смысла вроде как заложено много. Каждый решает для себя, какой он, насколько он важен. Ну вот. Лично для меня, я уже второй раз прохожу эту игру, поэтому решил записать ее. Ну, просто потому что это хорошая игра, на мой взгляд. Игра сделана с душой. Сделана красиво. Сделана необычно. И заставляет задуматься. Люблю такие игры. Именно поэтому мы играем, наверное. Ну, те, кто, естественно, играет в игры с сюжетом, для которых важно именно понять и проникнуться историей, а не просто там заниматься ерундой. Вот, не знаю, сколько это заняло времени, честно говоря. Даже не смотрел на часы. 2 часа где-то. Короткая игра. В принципе, ее можно и смотреть в таком вот видео, как летсплей. Самому играть, в принципе, не обязательно. Очень сложно было найти именно в русской версии ее. Вот, но несколько дней поисков, весь перерытый интернет, и я нашел то, что хотел. Вот. Немножко упорства как по жизни, так и оно все восполняется. Есть еще несколько интересных игр. Возможно, когда-нибудь, если будет на то желание и время, я их пройду. Не прошел до конца Man of Medan, потому что у меня сломалось сохранение. Заново перепроходить, выбирать те же самые пути я не вижу смысла. Поэтому тот цикл, он, к сожалению, не окончился. Вот. Но зато есть возможность записывать Вот такие вот интересные игры. Недолгие, но интересные. На самом деле, вот эту игру мало кто знает, но в определенных кругах она очень знаменита, и очень много летсплеев на самом деле по ней. У разных стримеров, от самых известных до самых неизвестных, как я. Вот. Команда разработки. 5 лет игру разрабатывает. 5 лет. Казалось бы, короткая игра. Но такая вот команда ее сделала за 5 лет. Вот так вот. Наши все те герои, кто был. Вот. Всем спасибо за просмотр. И когда-нибудь услышимся и увидимся. Приятных снов или доброго утра.